On a bustling Cleveland street corner, Sarah huddled with her children, their thin jackets no match for the biting wind. Her trembling hands clutched a cardboard sign, a desperate plea for help. Passers-by averted their eyes, the family's plight invisible in the shadow of towering skyscrapers. Miles away, Barron Trump scrolled through his phone. His eyes fell upon Sarah's story, a stark contrast to his gilded reality. Something stirred within the first son, a feeling he couldn't shake. What would compel this privileged teenager to reach across the vast divide of their worlds? The answer would lead to an unexpected connection, shocking the nation and bringing tears to millions. The streets of Cleveland bustled with urban cacophony, but for Sarah, a young mother clutching her children's hands tightly, the noise was just a backdrop to her silent desperation. Her world had shrunk to the weight of the single backpack slung over her shoulder, containing all that remained of their former life. As they walked, Sarah's eyes darted from storefront to storefront, searching for a safe place to rest. Sarah's mind drifted to a time not long ago when she had a home, a job, and a sense of security. The memory of her children's laughter echoing through their small apartment seemed like a distant dream now. The scent of fresh-baked cookies and the warmth of movie nights on their worn but comfortable couch were replaced by the harsh reality of the streets. Now each day was a grueling test of survival and dignity. The bitter wind nipped at their faces as they huddled together on park benches, trying to stay warm. Finding safe shelter was a constant challenge, with overcrowded and often dangerous homeless shelters offering little respite. Keeping children in school became a Herculean task when basic needs like food and hygiene were daily struggles. Sarah often found herself facing impossible choices. Should she use her last few dollars for food or to wash their clothes so her kids wouldn't be stigmatized at school? The long-term impact of homelessness on children weighed heavily on Sarah's mind. She worried about her kids' future, their ability to form relationships and succeed in life. In moments of quiet desperation, she wondered how families like hers could find hope in such dire circumstances. As Sarah guided her children through the streets, her mind raced with worries. Would they ever have a place to call home again? Would her children be able to break free from the cycle of poverty that had ensnared them? The contrast between their current reality and the childhood many Americans take for granted was stark and unsettling. Yet even in the darkest times, unexpected allies can emerge in the fight against homelessness. Community organizations, compassionate individuals, and sometimes even those in positions of power can become beacons of hope for families in need. These allies often appear in the most unlikely forms, challenging our preconceptions about who can make a difference. For Sarah, help would come from a source she never could have imagined. As she sat on a park bench, her children huddled close for warmth, she made a decision born of desperation and hope. With trembling hands, she pulled out a crumpled piece of paper and a stubby pencil from her backpack. Taking a deep breath, she began to write a letter that would change her life forever. Sarah's trembling fingers clutched the letter, her heart racing as she reread her words. The weight of her family's future pressed down on her. She thought of her children, curled up asleep on the park bench beside her, shivering against the night's chill. The letter to Barron Trump had taken hours to craft, each sentence a careful plea for help. "Dear Barron," it began, "I'm Sarah, a mother of two beautiful children. We're homeless, living on the streets of Cleveland, and I'm terrified for our future." She described their daily struggles, the search for food and shelter, the fear when her children coughed in the night. Sarah wrote of her determination to find work, of countless job applications and doors slammed in her face. She shared the pain of watching her children's dreams slip away. "I know you've probably never wondered where your next meal will come from," Sarah continued, "but I believe in the kindness of children, in their ability to see past barriers. I'm asking for your help, not just for me, but for my kids who deserve a chance at a better life." As she sealed the envelope, Sarah felt a mix of emotions. Shame at having to beg, fear of exposing her vulnerabilities, and a tiny spark of hope that this plea might lead to something that could change their circumstances. The next morning, Sarah stood before the mailbox, the letter clutched to her chest. For a moment, she hesitated. Was this foolish? But as she thought of her children's faces, She knew she had to try. With a deep breath, Sarah slipped the letter into the mailbox. As it disappeared from view, she felt relief and anxiety. She had done all she could. Now, all that was left was to wait and hope that her words would reach the heart of a young boy who might have the power to help. Sarah turned away, her mind racing with possibilities. What if Barron read the letter? What if he showed it to his father? As she walked back to her children, Sarah allowed herself to imagine a future where they had a roof over their heads and food in their bellies. It was a dangerous hope, but in that moment, it was all she had. In the opulent halls of Mar-a-Lago, Barron Trump's world couldn't have been more different from Sarah's. The sprawling estate, with its manicured lawns and gilded interiors, was a far cry from the harsh realities of Cleveland streets. On this particular morning, Barron woke to the gentle chime of his alarm, the Florida sun already streaming through his curtains. As he made his way down to breakfast, the staff greeted him with polite smiles. Barron sat at the immaculate dining table, scrolling through his phone, his world a carefully curated bubble of privilege and protection. In a small office tucked away in the east wing of the estate, a staff member sifted through the day's mail. Sarah's letter, with its smudged handwriting and worn envelope, should have been easily discarded. Yet something made her pause. She placed the letter in Barron's personal pile. As Barron finished his breakfast, the staff member approached with his mail. He flipped through the letters absently, but paused at Sarah's envelope. Its simplicity stood out among the others. With a mixture of curiosity and trepidation, Barron opened the letter. As he began to read, the world around him seemed to fade away. Sarah's words, filled with pain, hope, and a mother's desperate love, leapt off the page. For a moment, Barron sat in stunned silence. The letter in his hands was a window into a world he had never truly seen. He read of Sarah's struggles, of nights spent huddled with her children in dark alleys, of the constant fear and uncertainty that plagued their every moment. As he read, something stirred within Barron. It wasn't pity exactly, but a dawning realization of the vast gulf between his reality and Sarah's. He thought of his own mother, of the lengths she would go to protect him. Sarah's children became more than just nameless faces in a letter. They became real, their suffering palpable. Barron's hands trembled slightly as he finished reading. He looked up, his eyes scanning the luxurious room that suddenly felt almost obscene in its opulence. His heart raced, and he felt a strange mix of guilt and determination wash over him. With a determination that surprised even himself, Barron stood up, letter clutched tightly in his hand. "Mom?" he called out, his voice wavering slightly. "Dad, I need to talk to you. It's important." As Barron sought out his parents, his mind raced with possibilities. What could he do? How could he help? He didn't have all the answers, but he knew he had to try. This letter, this desperate reach across the vast divide of American society, had found its mark. And Barron Trump, a teenager born into unimaginable privilege, was about to take his first steps into a world he barely understood, driven by an awakening sense of empathy and responsibility. Barron's footsteps echoed through the marble hallway as he approached his parents' suite. His heart raced, Sarah's letter clutched tightly in his trembling hand. The weight of her words, the desperation in her plea, had shaken him to his core. He paused before the ornate double doors, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. For days, Barron had grappled with Sarah's letter, the stark contrast between her life on Cleveland streets and his privileged existence at Mar-a-Lago gnawing at him. The image of Sarah and her children, cold and hungry, haunted him as he slept in his lavish bed. Torn between his desire to help and the potential consequences, Barron turned to research. He immersed himself in statistics and stories about homelessness in America, each account echoing Sarah's plight. As his understanding grew, so did his resolve. This was about a systemic issue affecting millions. Seeking guidance, Barron reached out to his siblings. Ivanka listened patiently, offering insights from her charity work. "It's not just about immediate aid," she explained. "We need sustainable solutions that empower people to rebuild their lives." Don Jr. focused on economic aspects. "Job creation is key," he argued. "We should partner with businesses to provide training and employment opportunities." Eric emphasized mental health support. Many homeless individuals struggle with untreated conditions, he pointed out. We need to address these underlying issues. Their perspectives swirled in Barron's mind, shaping his evolving plan. He envisioned a multifaceted approach, immediate aid for Sarah, coupled with a broader initiative to support homeless families nationwide. As the days passed, Barron rehearsed his pitch to his parents. In the privacy of his room, he practiced articulating his vision. "Mom, Dad," he began, his voice wavering, "I've learned about a crisis that demands our attention. We have the power to make a real difference." He anticipated his father's desire for grand gestures and his mother's more reserved approach. Barron knew he needed to strike a delicate balance, advocating for meaningful change without causing a media frenzy or politicizing Sarah's plight. Standing before their suite, Barron took a deep breath. Sarah's letter had opened his eyes to a world he barely knew existed, and he was determined to make a difference. With trembling fingers, he knocked on the door. As footsteps approached from inside, a calm determination settled over him. He may have been born into privilege, but now he had the chance to use that privilege for good. As the first rays of sunlight crept over the horizon, a solitary figure emerged from the opulent gates of Mar-a-Lago. Barron Trump, his face partially obscured by a baseball cap and sunglasses, moved with purpose towards a waiting car. The weight of Sarah's letter and the responsibility it carried pressed heavily on his young shoulders. In Cleveland, Barron sat across from Maria Rodriguez, a veteran social worker known for her tireless advocacy for homeless families. Her eyes widened as she recognized him, but she quickly composed herself. "I'm impressed by the depth of your proposal," Maria said, leaning forward. "Ms. Rodriguez, I need your help to make this work. Sarah and her children need a real chance at stability," Barron replied, his voice low but determined. "It won't be easy," Maria warned. "We're dealing with a vulnerable family, and your presence here complicates things." They pored over the details: a furnished apartment, job training programs, childcare arrangements. But the logistical hurdles loomed large. "How do we approach Sarah without overwhelming her?" Barron asked. Maria sighed. "Carefully, and we need to move fast. Every moment you're in Cleveland increases the risk of exposure." As the day wore on, Barron walked the streets where Sarah and her children had struggled. He passed by alleyways and underpasses, each one a potential shelter for a family in desperation. Back at the office, a breakthrough came. One of Maria's colleagues had located Sarah at a local soup kitchen. Barron's hands shook as he dialed the burner phone he had provided to the outreach team. "We've made contact," came the hushed voice on the other end. "She's listening. What should we tell her?" Barron outlined the offer: a furnished apartment, job training, childcare, and ongoing support. Sarah's voice, trembling with emotion, came through the line. "Is this real? Who are you?" For a moment, Barron considered revealing his identity. "I'm just someone who wants to help," he said softly. "Someone who believes in second chances." As the call ended, a wave of relief washed over Barron. The first step had been taken. Sarah and her children would sleep in a real bed tonight, with the promise of a brighter tomorrow. But he knew this was just the beginning. There were so many others out there, each with their own story, each deserving of the same chance. Sarah's hand trembled on the doorknob as she stood at the threshold of her new apartment. The weight of the moment pressed down on her, a mixture of disbelief and overwhelming gratitude. Behind her, her children's excited chatter filled the hallway, their voices tinged with a joy she hadn't heard in months. She pushed the door open, revealing a sight that took her breath away. Sunlight streamed through clean windows, casting a warm glow on freshly painted pale blue walls. A small dining table stood in the corner, already set with simple white plates and glasses. The kitchen gleamed with new appliances: a shiny refrigerator, a pristine stove, and a microwave that looked like it had never been used. "Mommy, look! Real beds," her youngest called out, bouncing on a twin mattress covered in soft, colorful sheets adorned with cartoon characters. "Can we really stay here?" her older son asked, his voice filled with wonder and a hint of disbelief. Sarah nodded, unable to speak as tears welled in her eyes. She watched her children dash from room to room, exclaiming over every discovery. The contrast between this sanctuary and the harsh realities they had endured on the streets was staggering. As she explored the apartment, Sarah found evidence of Barron's thoughtfulness everywhere. The refrigerator was stocked with fresh food, milk, eggs, fruits, and vegetables. A bookshelf held not only books but also school supplies for the children. In the bathroom, she discovered a basket filled with toiletries and a note that simply read, "A fresh start." On the kitchen counter, Sarah found a folder containing information about job placement assistance, childcare schedules, and contact information for a counselor. Her mind raced with possibilities. She imagined her daughter, who loved to draw, finally having the supplies and stability to nurture her talent. She thought of her son, bright but struggling in school, receiving the support he needed to thrive. As evening fell, Sarah sat on the small balcony, watching her children play in the living room. For the first time in months, they looked truly relaxed, their faces free from the constant worry that had aged them beyond their years. A fierce determination welled up inside her. This opportunity was more than just a gift. It was a responsibility. Sarah vowed to make the most of every resource, every chance to build a better life. And one day when she was back on her feet, she would find a way to help others who were still struggling. The story of Sarah and Barron's unexpected alliance spread through Cleveland like wildfire, igniting a spark of hope in a city long accustomed to the harsh realities of urban poverty. As the sun rose over the city's skyline, news vans lined the streets, their satellite dishes reaching toward the sky, hungry for the latest developments in this heartwarming tale. Social media platforms buzzed with activity as people shared and reshared the story. In coffee shops and office break rooms, conversations turned to this modern-day fairy tale. Then, like a bolt from the blue, the truth emerged. Barron Trump, the youngest son of one of America's most controversial families, was revealed as the architect of Sarah's salvation. In his room at the White House, Barron sat on the edge of his bed, his phone buzzing incessantly with notifications. His hands trembled as he scrolled through the flood of messages, a mix of praise and criticism. He felt a knot in his stomach, torn between pride in his actions and anxiety about the public scrutiny. Maria Rodriguez, the veteran social worker who had worked alongside Barron, found herself at the center of a media frenzy. Watching a young man from such privilege recognize the struggles of those less fortunate and take action to help has given me renewed faith in the potential for change, she said, her voice steady despite the forest of microphones surrounding her. The impact wasn't limited to conversation. In Seattle, a group of high school students started a campaign to collect and distribute essentials to homeless families in their area. In Atlanta, a tech entrepreneur launched a platform connecting skilled homeless individuals with job opportunities. In Boston, a coalition of churches and synagogues created a network of temporary housing for families in crisis. As these initiatives took root and grew, a new narrative began to emerge. The story had become a catalyst for a national reckoning with the issue of homelessness. Politicians who had long sidestepped the topic now found themselves forced to address it, as constituents demanded action and solutions. Experts in housing policy, mental health, and economic development were called upon to offer insights and propose systemic solutions. The conversation shifted from band-aid fixes to long-term strategies for preventing homelessness and supporting those struggling to find stability. In the midst of this whirlwind of activity and debate, Sarah and her children remained at the center, a living testament to the power of compassion and the potential for change. Their story, once a tale of desperation, had become a beacon of hope for countless others facing similar struggles. The story of Barron Trump and Sarah sparked a nationwide wave of compassion, reminding us that empathy transcends all boundaries. Communities rallied to support their vulnerable members through supply drives, job connections, and temporary housing. Months later, Barron and Sarah met in person. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes as she hugged the young man who had changed her life. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. Barron smiled, his own eyes glistening. Their story challenges us all. What small act of kindness could you perform today that might change someone's world tomorrow? Look beyond your circumstances, recognize the humanity in others, and take that first step towards making a difference.